Ladies and gentlemen, today we have an absolutely massive video for you. Quite literally, because inside this box is the brand new Corsair Xeneon Flex monitor, a 45-inch OLED that unsurprisingly is flexible. Unlike my wrist, because I seem to have hurt myself, it's heavy, okay? Who needs two-man lift when you've got arms like these? Me. And I'm genuinely fascinated to know whether this thing is actually going to be any good, because I first saw this last year, where was it? Gamescom, I think? And it definitely did catch my attention because we've not really seen anything like it before. I mean, it's got high resolution, it's got a massive screen size, and because it's OLED, you're going to get true blacks and that next-gen HDR experience from this new OLED panel. Oh, and one more thing, this is also 240 Hertz. 240 Hertz OLED, 3440 by 1440 on an absolutely massive curved display. What's not to like? Well, probably the price, but then also potentially the pixel density. But we won't know till we open this box. So let's get it unboxed, set up, and actually get gaming on it after a short word from this video's sponsor. You guys have been asking for ages about the music that I use in my videos, and I'm really pleased to say that it's actually from the sponsor of today's video, Epidemic Sound. Epidemic Sound is the creator's go-to resource for restriction-free music and sound effects, with affordable plans, clear and simple licensing, and a huge library of 40,000 audio tracks and 90,000 sound effects. Unlike built-in libraries, Epidemic Sound lets you find unique soundtracks for your content that can be published and monetized across all online platforms, saving you time and keeping your creative vision intact. It really has been so incredibly useful for the channel, and I really love the fact that you can download tracks with or without vocals, so if you like one but you don't think it's quite appropriate, then you can take the vocals away, and hey, you've got a backing track. There are different plans available depending on your size and structure, so you can save money regardless of whether you're a freelancer, small company, or full-blown enterprise. I'm on the commercial plan, which lets me use the music and ad reads like this, as well as content created for any third-party clients. It has been my go-to service for years, and there's no reason that it can't be yours either. Simply hit my link down in the description below to get a 30-day free trial where you can discover the wealth of tracks available. Everything that you post during the trial is protected, even if you cancel. Right, here we go then. We've undone the top, so I think it's just a few clips at the bottom. Oh, the whole thing comes out, maybe. And then, in theory, it should just lift up. Oh, yep. Yep. Try not to take out the overhead camera while we're at this. I think we've done it. Oh, don't worry, this isn't high risk at all. Corsair sent this in a flight container, but they forgot they were sending it to me. You're gonna need a heck of a lot of space on your desk to be able to fit this. But the clever and unique thing about this is that it's bendable. So it's either curved or flat, depending on what you actually want to do with it. And this is gonna mean that it will take up slightly less space on your desk if you curve it. Not gonna make a huge amount of difference, but every little helps. But then in theory, this means that if you are gonna be doing some productivity on this or just loads of different activities, then you could use this in flat mode and not have to worry about a load of like weird wavy lines that should be straight. But then when you're gaming, you can get that full immersion and sort of bring it round in front of you. Right, how has this come out? Oh, just like that. That's fine. Let's lay this down flat. So here is the stand. Nice solid bit of metal, certainly needs to be for something this size. And I'll tell you what, it's actually quite nice that all of the connections are actually located on the back of the stand. That is very unusual. I don't think I've ever seen this from anything other than like an all-in-one computer like an iMac or something. But look, you've got all of your display outputs here. So you've got two HDMIs, DisplayPort, USB-C with DisplayPort functionality as well, and then you've got two USB ports and a USB Type-C. But anyway, this is hopefully the bit you've been waiting for. Ta-da! Ooh, okay. And the only version that I saw last year was still pre-production. And I'll be honest, there were concerns from myself about damage when you're doing the bending, and if you do it over and over again, what's going to happen. But obviously you'd like to think if Corsair are going to sell a bendable display, then you shouldn't really be able to damage it very easily by actually bending it as intended. And I mean, you can tell that this is a little bit different, because if we have a look at the back again, we've got this very unusual mechanism here with these little handles that you sort of pull in and pull out, and this is what you use to actually bend it round to control whether it's flat or curved. As for power, you are going to need the external power brick that comes with this. How many watts is this rated for? 240 watts, so that is actually quite a lot, but don't forget that this is a 240 Hertz monitor, so maybe it's 1 watt of power per FPS? I mean, it's definitely not, but obviously something this big that is rated for 240 Hertz, when you're using it in gaming mode and properly saturating that, then yes, you are going to need quite a lot of power from both the monitor side and obviously your PC. I mean, don't worry guys, I mean, electricity is really cheap at the moment. Let's get this hooked up to our laptop for a second and make sure it actually works. All of our buttons are actually down here at the bottom. You've got 2 more USB ports as well, alongside your input button, power, and then this 4-way selector. Yes, there we go. We have full resolution. That is big. That is big. I mean, laptop for scale, look. There we go. Samsung Galaxy Book 3 Ultra, 45-inch display. But I think there's one more thing we need to do before we actually get this into my setup, and that is to do the bend. And as I say, hope that we don't actually break anything. So handles come out, and then you just bend it round. And you can choose how much you want to bend it, less or more. Well, there you go. It is actually as simple as that, really. Requires a fair bit of force, but nothing too crazy. Yeah, there definitely is like a hard stop, so you will know when you've bent it all of the way. And the monitor does definitely look very different once you have bent it. And you can see what I mean as well about it taking up less space. It's actually a bit more dramatic than I would have thought. But there's your in. Oh, and there's your out. I mean, I'll be honest, actually, I don't like the mechanism. Not because there's anything particularly wrong with it, but you think if it was automated, you wouldn't have the worry of applying the right amount of pressure and stuff. But I am feeling a little bit nervous when I'm doing it. And obviously, I'm not being funny, if I break it, it's not as much of a big deal as if you do. Out of interest, I wonder what refresh rate we can actually feed into this over USB Type-C. 240. Oh, that is not necessarily surprising, but I'm not sure I expected that. Boom, there you go. I think we should put this in our setup. And let's not forget that the monitor that's on my desk now is already massive. This is 38 inches across. This is the Alienware 3840 by 1600 monitor. So I definitely am used to a very big ultra-wide monitor, but it's fair to say that this is a step up. But I think my main concern really is going to be that pixel density, because while 3440 by 1440 is definitely sharp enough for most ultra-wides, 45 inch is a whole different beast. So here we go. And again, this monitor is surprisingly lightweight for something of its size. It's definitely lighter than the Alienware that it is replacing. Before you guys get excited, no, I am not allowed to keep this one. Of course, they have one sample and they want it back. And I mean, it does fit just about. I will have to adjust my speakers. But for those asking, and you always ask, this desk is 192 centimeters wide. So if you do want PC and monitor, you're going to need some smaller speakers to be able to fit this on. This was actually a custom desk as well, so if you get your standard ones from, well, desk places like IKEA, they're probably not going to be as big as this, so big desk, definitely a requirement. Okay, here we go. Here we go. We're in, we're ready to rock and roll. Yes, there we go. And immediately, I can tell the image quality is very good. This is very similar and reminiscent to the 240 Hz OLED panel that I reviewed a few weeks ago that was in the 27-inch form factor. You can find that video in the top right-hand corner of your screen. And I really enjoyed that monitor with the exception of the coating. I look ridiculous now. Wait, hold on. The coating on that LG monitor had this horrible like matte moire finish to it that I haven't really seen before. I was really hoping that we're not going to see the same sort of thing on this, and it is still a matte coating, which not everyone is going to like. This is not as glossy as something like the QD OLEDs that you find from Alienware, but this probably is about right because it's quite a bright room here and we're not really picking up too many reflections. Bearing in mind this is an absolutely huge curved display, yet the image quality is still sharp enough, I suppose. We're not getting too many artifacts or anything from that matte coating. However, I can immediately notice that the image quality itself from the density of the pixels is not quite as good as what I had before. I mean, that makes sense. Obviously, it is a lower pixel density. It's fair to say that this is a noticeable step down. Again, the image quality itself from the color reproduction clearly is very good, if not probably a little bit oversaturated out the box. But if you are going to be using this for a lot of work or anything really like, I don't know, image editing of any description, then you might want to look at something, well, I guess like the Alienware that I've just replaced, though that is not 240 Hz, and the image quality on that probably isn't quite as accurate. But for gaming, I think we can work with this. There you go, Corsair, put that on the box, PC Centric. I think you can work with this. But step into my domain properly for a second, as I double check whether this thing is fully curved. It's not, there you go. This is what I mean. It'd be nice if there was some sort of indicator, but there's not. And we don't have height adjust as well, which is quite annoying. You've just got tilt and bend. It's almost as if you need to sort of twist it slightly as well to make sure that all of the corners are fully towards you. And it is definitely weird to see it sort of warp back and forth. But I will say that I do prefer this form factor to one of those like super ultra-wide monitors. If you're going to be doing like racing games or something like that, fair enough. Or if you're regularly going to use like 2 monitors side by side, fantastic. But I like to use more of a traditional one screen setup and maybe just have 2 windows side by side. Maybe it's just what I'm used to. Let's set this to 240 Hz mode and open up Test UFO to have a look. And this should be very similar to the previous 240 Hz OLED. And to my eyes, it is more or less the same, which does make sense. They're rating it as like 0.03 milliseconds. I think that's probably a little bit not realistic for sort of everyday use, but I mean, you're still going to be getting some of the best pixel response times in the world. Not only is this an OLED, but it's one of the new generations, and you've got pixel brightness boost, so you've got brighter HDR, and you should have even better levels of response time. And it is quite fascinating just to sort of stare and see the difference, even between 120 Hz and 240. Let's have a look at our ghosting test, and yeah, there you go. Wow. Wow, wow, wow. It's just amazing to me the amount of progress that we've made with gaming monitors over the last 10 years or so. Because when I first got into PC gaming, they were pretty much all very stagnant, and it was actually 3D. You have 3D to thank for 120 Hz monitors coming in, because they were like a byproduct of 3D active shutter. You needed to have 60 Hz for each eye. That's how it works. And we seem to have somehow manifested into 45-inch bendable OLED monitors that run at 240 Hz with high resolution. Again, it is high resolution. It's just not necessarily high for a screen of this size. I mean, there is just so much screen real estate as well, by the way. I wonder if you can curve one side but not the other. Is that a thing? And you might be wondering why, but let's say I want to work on something on this side of the monitor but then watch a video on the right. It does feel slightly far away when you have it flat. So actually, having it like that is quite a nice option. While I'm updating my device drivers, let's take this opportunity to actually have a look at the menu system. So we just hit this button and we have this nice 4-way selector, and we can go through and have a look at the options. It's pretty easy to find things, I think. It's not the most attractive menu, it's just black and white, but it does work. But the setting that I am actually looking for, as our screen flashes black as we're doing our drivers, good idea, Marcus, is actually ABL Auto Brightness Limiter. Because with an OLED, sometimes what happens is if you have like a white window and you make it full screen, it goes from being very bright to essentially being quite dim, because it's trying to preserve the life of the OLED panel so it lasts longer. But obviously on a PC monitor, you don't really want that, or at least you want the option to be able to turn it off. So let's have a look. Is it in here? Brightness stabilizer. Ah, that sounds about right. In its default state, it is actually off. Turning that on does make the whole thing a lot dimmer. I mean, you can see the difference there. So what happens if we get an Explorer window, we make it quite small, it's pretty bright at the moment, and we make it big? Yeah, you can see quite a big difference actually. That does definitely lose quite a lot of brightness. I will follow up with Corsair and see if there is a way to adjust or disable that. I can't see it, but that doesn't mean it doesn't exist, and can't exist with a firmware update. But I think a lot of manufacturers are nervous about having these settings, because it does mean that in a few years' time, extreme users might have more image retention than they should, and they'd be getting returns, and they'd be like, well, you just had it on an Excel spreadsheet for 12 hours a day. What did you expect? If that's you, by the way, this is not the monitor for you. Unfortunately, no OLED monitor is right for you at the moment. Oh, but let's get gaming. There are people bored going, oh, I'm gonna click away now. I haven't seen the games. Have you heard of skipping ahead of the video? Come on, it's 2023, get with it. And yes, sorry, one last thing before we jump into some Apex Legends. This does also have G-Sync compatibility. It says it's not rated as G-Sync compatible, but it could just be that it's not actually in the driver just yet. Again, I will check and let you know in the pinned comment. And as we jump down from the jet, we will actually take a closer look at our frame rate, because this is running with an RTX 3080. So not the absolute highest end, but as we know, still a very high-end GPU. And we're currently getting about 132 frames a second. And the thing is, Apex isn't actually the most difficult game in the world to drive. And this is the main reason why the resolution of this display isn't quite as high as some of you might expect. It's just because no one really is going to be able to drive this at 240 Hz if it had a high resolution. And obviously a high resolution would be better if you're using this for work purposes, but as this is very much a gaming display, then I have to admit I do actually agree with LG, or at least LG Display and obviously Corsair, who then bought the panel, for going down this route, because I don't think it really would have made much sense, and people might have bought it and then not really been able to use it, which would have been a little bit of a shame. Oh, you're joking me, man! Come on! No! Don't put that in the video. What I was trying to say, before I got interrupted again, was that the pixel density on this isn't as important as the immersion, because if you're using this as a desktop monitor, then yes, something like Excel or anything where you've got loads of really small items of text, you're going to notice that it's not quite as sharp as it would be on a different display. But here, everything is still quite big anyway. All of the text does look very sharp because it's not really small things. I mean, I guess it kind of depends what you play. Like maybe if you're playing something like Civilization and everything is really small, then you might notice it a little bit more. But genuinely, I have no problem recommending this 45-inch monitor for gamers with this resolution, because I think overall it does make sense. And if you were going to go for an even higher resolution, you would need an RTX 4090 at least to be able to drive it. Whereas in a scene like this, you can see everything is quite big. You're not having to look at all of these tiny details. And as soon as you start moving around anyway, what is noticeable is just how clear the image refresh rate is and all of that higher resolution and the extra response time of the panel, not the fact that it's not quite as sharp as like a 4K or maybe a 3840 by 1600 monitor would be. Let's move on to something else. Right, here we go. Age of Empires 4. And you might think that this is a game that would need high resolution because everything is a bit smaller. As we've just said, the smaller things are, the more detail you need to resolve. So is it a problem? Honestly, again, just no. There's nothing wrong with this whatsoever. And I know there has been some, I'm not sure outrage is fair, but there has been some concerns online. Same with me, I was very much in that camp, that this just wouldn't be sharp enough. But there is absolutely nothing wrong with the resolution of this whatsoever. It's just another game though where we're not actually getting the full 240 Hertz. We're getting about 130, 140 here. So it's gonna get very expensive, isn't it? This monitor is over £2,000. What are you actually getting for that? You're getting that super fast 240 Hertz refresh rate, but if you can't use it, then that's obviously going to waste. And yes, you absolutely can grab the handles and bring this out and curve it round, which does completely transform the way that this looks. That actually makes you feel a bit sick, I'm not gonna lie, on this game, going left to right. That's not recommended. You can get that. The main problem I have with this is pretty much the exact same problem that I had with a 27-inch version of this that isn't flexible, and that is just that the QD OLEDs from Samsung, Alienware, and Philips Evnia are just a lot cheaper than this. And yes, they're not as big, they're not as immersive, they can't beat this monitor for that. But then they're probably more useful and practical for people that have a smaller desk, and they're pretty much half the price, or at least a lot cheaper. So I'm just wondering, is this a gimmick or not? And I would say it's not, but it's not enough of not a gimmick for all of that extra expense. Does that make sense? Right, one final game, my favorite at the moment. This is some Returnal. Not spoiling anything, but this is one of the areas later on in the game. I've been playing this a lot recently, but once again, this is still another title that even with DLSS and things turned on, you can see we're still not getting a full 240 frames a second. I do think we've probably got ray tracing on though, so actually this is a game that runs quite well. Yes, there you go, ray tracing is on. So if we turn this off, let's see how high we can actually get our frame rate. About 135, 140 frames a second, so it hasn't actually made like a crazy amount of difference. But clearly this is a title that actually takes full advantage of all of this screen real estate. It is a very immersive game anyway, no matter what screen you want to play it on, but having all of the particle effects and having all of these different things going on at once, it really does enable you to take in these pretty cool, large, detailed worlds in all of their, I was going to say detail, all of their glory, shall we say. This is a monitor that should actually be able to get very bright, as this is one of the next-gen OLEDs, but I admit it doesn't necessarily pop quite in the way I would have imagined. That's not to say it's not getting bright, it's just not like blowing my face off like you would find from a mini LED backlight. But you've not got any sort of haloing or anything, and you still have all of that lovely 240, 0.03 apparently millisecond response time. So all in all, very, very happy with the way this looks. Although to be fair, the UI down the bottom left is definitely not quite as sharp as it would be on something else. So then, the Corsair Xeneon Flex. Is this something to buy and flex to all of your friends about, or is this something that you should just leave firmly behind? Well, at its RRP of £2,100, I'm not convinced that this is necessarily the best value, and there are plenty of other options out there that I think offer gamers not only better value for money, but probably a little bit more practicality as well. At the time of filming, I have checked, and this is available, the lowest I've seen, for about £1,830. That is a lot better and does make a whole lot more sense, but I think you're paying quite a lot for the R&D of this monitor and obviously the mechanism for it to flex. If you are someone that does want both a curved and a flat monitor, then clearly this is going to be your best bet. But for everybody else, I would say it's definitely worth strongly considering if you want a monitor that is this big. But if you're dead set on that, then I would still probably go for the LG option if it was considerably cheaper, because I'm not convinced that everyone needs to flex, especially if you're sort of worried that you might break it when you're pulling it out. But actually, I think the execution of this product is very, very good. I think Corsair clearly know what they're doing with this sort of thing, and they've done an excellent job. And if you are okay with gaming at 3440 by 1440, and I think you will be, then this does come recommended. It's just the QD OLED ultra wide from Alienware that you can get for about £950 is just so much better value. It's going to fit onto more desks, and the pixel density is obviously that little bit higher because it's not quite so big. So most people should buy that. Anyone else that wants a huge 45-inch bendable display? Corsair have done a pretty good job. But of course, the question goes out to you guys. What do you think of this? Is this gaming goddess, or is it a gimmick? I'd absolutely love to hear your thoughts, so let me know down in the comment section below. Don't forget to absolutely smash that like button if you've enjoyed this, get yourself subscribed, and if you do want to check out current pricing on anything featured in this video, including the Xeneon Flex, you can find it linked down below with my Amazon affiliate links. But thank you so much for watching this video. I'll catch you in the next one.